Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to what is the first ever Women in Construction World Series online festival. My name is Anjali Pandoria, and I'm going to be doing a little session on deconstructing ethnic minority engagement to reconstruct inclusivity. I work as a project surveyor at a family-run carpentry and joinery subcontractor called Avi Contracts. I like to keep myself busy by being a strong advocate of inclusivity, sharing my experiences, research, and networks to help us all become the best version of society that we can be. Within our built environment, according to Hayes research, 60% of all workers believe that their leaders have a bias towards people who look, think, and act like them. This is human instinct, I guess, but what happens when you are someone like me? I, like a few others in our industry, carry bricks on my back. Bricks that are visible to everyone, quite like this background. I am a part of the 13% of women employed in our sector. I am a part of the 12% of other millennials employed in our sector. But when ethnicity comes into the fold, I only fall a part of 5.7% of BAME individuals. To put that number into perspective, it's like filling Wembley Stadium just under twice versus filling that same stadium 32 times. So across the UK's built environment, the chance of finding someone who I can relate to is 94% harder than those who aren't from BAME backgrounds. And even then, that small percent that I do belong to is full of so many other different cultures and backgrounds. So what is my true representation in this sector? No one really knows. This is a high-level overview of our industry's hierarchy. We have primary, secondary, and tertiary parties that all contribute towards our industry. We have the government at the top, feeding into our industry and governing bodies, which then affect the contractors who employ the SMEs and supply chain partners to fulfill contracts, who go to the tertiary sectors of the suppliers and merchants, who without all of this, construction wouldn't be possible. But when we break down that percent of people in this hierarchy, it is evident that the bottom two tiers that might not get the most support and direction or even have any idea as to how to change the deeply embedded culture of our sector are the ones that carry most of the weight. Conversations around inclusivity appear to be happening at the top two tiers, but this is a representation of less than 10% of our industry, whereas the bottom tiers represent more than 90% of our sector, but we have no way of actually tracking or assessing where the conversation even is. The other really interesting thing is our industry makes up for a lot of self-employed workers who have a lack of exposure to all these conversations, and this is why the gap is continually increasing. So if we change the tone from the top, if you change the behavior, you change the culture, then those lower down the tertiary sectors are then able to implement these actions that are being set. My three key takeaways with you guys today are understanding the importance of ethnic minority engagement, how to engage with the current workforce, and how to engage with grassroots to future-proof. So, why are these my three key takeaways for today? Why did I specifically want to talk about these and highlight these small segments in the short time that I do have with you today? Because we, as a sector, need to be responsible and be held accountable. Just forging change within our organisations and bubbles just won't cut it anymore. As an ethnic minority, I feel the responsibility starts with me, though, to educate my challenges and how I feel our sector could become more inclusive. If I'm not that voice for change, then how else are we going to change that narrative? How else are we going to know what actions and implementations we really need? We need to aim to understand this and understand why change is necessary and not just another bandwagon of tick box exercise. Understanding the importance of ethnic minority engagement is difficult, but with the recent world events and movements like Black Lives Matter, the eyes of society has opened up to having those taboo conversations. Conversations around engagement are more important than ever. Why? Because not only is it good for business, but it's the betterment of the mental health of the people within our sector. Representation matters, and if anyone feels they can't be themselves in an environment where they spend most of their life, then we do have a problem. Take my experiences as an example. I've had a fair few incidences on site. I love listening to Indian Bollywood Bhangra music, but the moment I shared that, it became oh, you must go out on the weekend twisting the light bulb and petting the dog. And the whole cabin just started laughing. Yeah, sure, it might have been a bit funny, but not the reaction I wanted when I just started sharing my identity, and it really put me off sharing anything else. And don't make me start about talking about my lunches, because that's just a whole conversation in itself. Being inquisitive is fine though, but when the line is crossed, it can become a bit offensive. What is offensive to me may or may not be to you, but it is the way I've been programmed, like others, similar from my background and upbringing from birth. And that circles us back to the first statistic I showed you. 60% of all workers believe their leaders have a bias towards people who look, think, and act like them. But I think 2020 has allowed us to be more representative of the inner us. And I have no doubt from now on out it will be the same. But if we do not use our voice now, it may be too late for the future. Working from home is the best example I can give you guys. Having my webcam on and people being intrusive of my personal space, which I don't ever share with others, has really opened up conversations. You might find this in common. You'll be having a meeting in a working space, in a living room or in the kitchen or wherever is working with all the other chaos that's been going on at home. And someone might just comment on something that they see in the back, or they then just start looking, oh, they have that color wallpaper, or they have those kinds of doors or wardrobes. And for me, it was people seeing this image of my bedroom wall that really made conversation. From seeing this image, everyone kept asking me, oh, so you really enjoy photography because I have loads of Polaroids up. Oh, so you like football because I have football posters up. Oh, so you enjoy traveling, when they asked what all the Polaroids were for. And there it was. I was no longer seen for my visible bricks, but the bricks that aren't ever seen. I was seen as just another human being with common interests with other people. And that is how we need to dissect all of this, because it is that short moment you meet your clients or engage with your workforce that you don't get to know them well enough. Like with anything in life, and just like bad habits, until we audit the problem and be 100% honest with the reflection that we see, we won't know where to change. So take a moment to think about yourself and your own workplaces or companies. What would you want to change so you feel you can bring your true self to work? All four tires of a car are needed to gather movement. And if the pressure in all of those tires are the same, then we're going to have a smooth running car. But if any of those wheels change, then it adds weight to the other three. Fairness is reduced and the car is no longer equally balanced. So the first thing we need to do is look inwards at the current employee engagement to help us deconstruct ethnic minority engagement to rebuild inclusivity. Starting with a clear vision or strategy. It isn't necessarily a bad thing to do this, and it gives you a clear direction as to what change needs to happen and what you might need to do. Set goals alongside your employees from diverse backgrounds and get their inputs. And before starting to implement these changes, ask for opinions, do a few trials and test runs and see how well something may or may not work. Whilst engaging with your workforce, look for role models within your firm at all levels of employment, from directors to site workers to graduates. We have to be careful though when we are picking role models. I don't mean just start picking random people from different cultures and backgrounds because there's one of those and it will make your company look like you're diverse. No, I'm talking about looking for stories, relatable stories where others in the workplace can see themselves. This will then naturally help others come forward to talk about their experiences, and then it will help us with the outward integration later on that I'll talk about. Have open and honest conversations or anonymous feedback portals where things can be called out. This shouldn't be looked down upon. People who are alienated struggle to come forward as it is. Why? Because they're going to get alienated even more. But it is our duty as employers and your duty as employers to have a platform where people can be themselves and tell you how they feel so you can make the culture of our sector more inclusive. It could be something small, but it could be so valuable to their part of change. But in order for us to really rebuild inclusive cultures, we need to have those honest conversations. Smaller companies may find this a bit difficult though, as it could become really obvious who has said what, but it is easier to then implement the change at all levels. And we must remember to be so supportive towards these people that are coming forward and actually allow them to have their voice. Leadership is key. Everything is driven from somewhere. But I don't mean leaders just being advocates. I mean leaders actually being the change makers. When conversations are had with senior leaders of the company, it feels like there is a purpose for change. Think about including the role models as the leaders for change, as they are at the forefront of the development. Education. I really couldn't stress this one enough. If we don't educate the workforce on the current situation we have and on the different people we have in society, then it's going to make it even harder for us to rebuild. Being on site, it is not surprising that I get stared at quite a lot, being a young Asian female, going up scaffolding to look at roofs being constructed. But it wasn't until I actually asked those people who were staring so much why it was. I was educated at that moment in time to realize why. They hadn't actually seen an Asian girl before. We forget how diverse our society has become and maybe how diverse our upbringings were, and how we have people working on sites that have literally come from different countries to work on building sites that they have only ever known to have seen men. So think about how you can use toolbox talks or workshops on site to educate, just like we did in schools, educating about the different cultures and traditions. Celebrate at work different cultural events and be mindful of these when organising company related events. I mean, I know we can't cater for everything, but we can really start somewhere. And finally, SME engagement. We all saw the hierarchy and we saw the figures. So if you are in a place of influence where SMEs and the supply chain are heavily involved, then think about how you can roll out inclusivity within the supply chain. Integrate the ethnic minority engagement within the pre-starts or inductions on sites, or if you have pre-enrollments, then really think about rolling out a video or two on it. Videos can be really engaging and a great way to get that message across. And supply chain out there, if you're listening today, my questions to you are, can you do more to recruit people from different backgrounds or make your workplace seem more approachable to all? Review yourself and think, do we really have the construction stereotype nature within our firm, or are we being the active change makers to help? Now, look outwards. Change needs to happen outside of the organisations and our sector for positive strides to influence our grassroots. Now, though we struggle to dissect ethnic minority engagement within our own workplaces, it is important we start to feed the grassroots with the culture we want to become and not where they have grown up to know, all those stereotypes. We really want to abolish that. And if we really want to do that, then we need to actively go out there and change that stereotype. Think about when you considered joining the industry? What were your thoughts on our culture? And just think about your honest opinions. I know mine was definitely all men, muddy, wet, all those stereotypes that you hear. But when you work in the industry, things seem different. And now we're evolving with technology. There's so much we can educate these people on. We need to start to change the perspective that cultures hold around construction. So when working on projects, think about local community engagement. If you are not in a place of influence at that level, then think about getting involved in your own local communities where you can help influence change. I do this by actively talking about my job role at Taekwondo when I go to the club that I do, because I train with a lot of kids and young people. And sometimes I'll just have my hard hat on me because I might be going straight from site, and they will really be inquisitive to ask questions. So let them ask questions and be honest with those answers. We really need to change society, and what better way to do this than schools? Try organize events where you can talk to parents. Parents need the most educating, as they are unaware of the jobs that now exist within our sector, especially the jobs that are different from when they were younger. The world is evolving, and so are the roles available. Within my culture personally, a lot of people tended to have roles that were trade based, but they didn't have the help of technology back then. So a lot of the work was done hands on and physical, whereas now we have a lot of things to help us with the manual lifting and things like that. But their education then filtered down to their children, who then think of our industry as the old industry, and they're unaware of all the professional roles and how we are developing with technology. So we really need to go out there into these communities, into society, and educate parents. And think about it yourself. How many other occupations do you know about now apart from our industry? I mean, we think about IT and finance and all these other sectors, and we think of them as just broad sectors, but we don't actually think about all the job roles. So likewise, we need to be educated. So that's a bit of thought for you there. Careers events are huge, and with the current climate, there is so much you can do online and showcase to students. I remember going to the local temple nearby my house for a careers event, and I did lots of myth busting, not just for students but with parents, and it was so interesting. So interesting to educate them about the way we do things now, how the industry's changing, and if we really want to tackle ethnic minority engagement, we need to change the perceptions that they hold so that they can influence their children in positive ways. Accessibility. How are you promoting the good things you are doing and the opportunities your company has and what you're rolling out? I mean, we always complain we don't have enough people coming forward, but is it because the message just isn't reaching them? On average, a teen spends 7 hours and 22 minutes on their phone. Adults aged 25 to 34 who use social media use it for more than 2 hours and 37 minutes a day. That is huge. And if we can use these platforms to engage with the grassroots, we will become more accessible and we'll get a version of our industry out that isn't necessarily what they're seeing. Are we accessible enough for the people we want in the industry? If we want to include ethnic minorities, we need to think about the different ways to reach out to them. Normally, in our sector, employment really does happen with word of mouth or on previous project relations. So we need to be more aware of the different ways that we can have information that is more accessible to people out there. Company ethos. Are you doing what you are saying? It is really important that the ethos of firms are positive towards the change, but even more important that the next gen can see you embodying that vision. Ethics of a business are high on their list when looking for improvement. And with that power of social media, if there's anything they see that is out of place, then they're going to start reporting it. So you need to think about being really inclusive and how you can really embody different cultures. Work experience. Now, this one I am particularly fond of. Given that we are becoming more tech-based, it's a great way to be able to share knowledge of the different roles that fall within that 90% category that I explained before. I've been involved with working with different organizations recently, especially with the climate right now, to get up virtual work experience and even virtual site events. So it's really important to start thinking outside of the box, and even just filming day in the life stuff. I mean, students are just really inquisitive right now about sites, not just students within the construction sector, but those outside, to really start thinking how you can start portraying what it is that we really do in our industry to them. So I hope you have understood why it is important we deconstruct engagement of both of these groups so that we can really rebuild inclusivity within our sector. I started my journey to help ethnic minority engagement in society back in 2011 when I was at school, where I set up a sports club under the Sky Sports Living for Sport programme to help young girls. I then stood in that same room again when I went back to school to present about construction to help reduce the ethnic minority barriers around our industry. But not much has changed apart from students becoming more vocal of the negative image they see our industry as. And though I'm not presenting from the same room today, I'm still talking about the same thing 9 years later. We need to change the narrative, and we really need to deconstruct how we engage with people, how we become more accessible, and how we really change perceptions of our industry. I can't be speaking alone, and my voice can only be heard so much until it is acted upon by everyone. If we have learned anything this year, it is that we need to be better humans. We speak a lot, but we don't embody that voice. Learn from those in our history of time and really embody the passion, the vision, and the voice that they had advocating change. Be the change our industry seeks, and let's not make it harder for those in our sector and those coming in so that we can really help rebuild inclusivity. I am now going to open the floor to some Q&As.